So, welcome to the webinar. For those of you that aren't aware of who we are, the Curve Group, I thought I'd just start with a very high-level overview of who we are and what we do. So at Curve, we support organisations to design, develop and elevate their recruitment HR functions. And we do that in a number of ways. And that's primarily through things like analysis, audits, benchmarking, consultancy and delivery services. And our big USP and why so many organisations keep coming back to us is because we've actually got expertise across the entire employee lifecycle. We are very proud of what we deliver. We've just celebrated our 20-year anniversary, and over the years we've been lucky enough to accumulate lots of lovely awards and accolades. So yeah, we're very, very proud of what it is that we do. Today, I mentioned I am joined by some co-hosts who you'll meet shortly. I've got Kelly York, our Chief Operating Officer, and I have got Anna Clapton, Head of HR Consultancy. My name is Sam Pusey. I am here as your host today, so if you have got any questions, I'll be fielding those for you. But yes, before we sort of dive into the webinar, I'm just going to give you an overview of what we're covering today, and just explain that the reason that I've got Kelly and Anna here is that they're both working and have worked for years with organisations around kind of how to improve how businesses recruit, train, support, engage neurodiverse colleagues. So they're kind of the subject matter experts, and they'll be sharing their learnings and expertise with you today. So in terms of what's coming up, by way of an overview, we're just going to have an introduction quickly to what it is that we mean by neurodiversity, make sure that we're all starting on the same page. We're going to look at what some of the data is saying out there at the moment, which will highlight actually why it's so very important to focus on this topic, and how it can be so beneficial to businesses to really focus on making sure that you're inclusive as an employer. I'll then hand over to Kelly, who will talk in depth about inclusive recruitment processes, and we'll start with looking at some of the typical barriers to entry, and also then really going into quite a lot of detail around equitable hiring practices and the changes that you can make in your businesses. Then we'll focus on Anna, looking at all the kind of things in terms of how you engage and support those employees once they're in your organisation, once you've gone through that recruitment and onboarding process. So looking at all of the working practices, how to make sure you're personalising your approaches, educating your organisations, making reasonable adjustments, and even thinking about simple things in your office environment. And then we'll be wrapping up by looking at neurodiversity as an element within your broader quality, diversity, inclusion strategy. And then we'll be finishing with just some top tips and key takeaways. So I shall hand you over to the very capable Anna now to start. Thank you, Anna.
We just wanted to start off with a couple of really great quotes to get us going, really. So, neurodiversity is a natural and valuable form of human diversity. Neurodiversity is a noun that refers to the idea that people with different functioning brains are part of the normal range of human variation. We wanted to start with these because whilst we're talking about and empowering a neurodiverse workforce, everything we talk about and share today should actually be applied to everyone in your workforce. All brains are unique, so don't get too hung up on neurodiverse only being those with formal diagnosis or extreme requirements. Neurodiversity is just part of the human, and it's just part of what makes us all human as well. So when we look about it, we look at it about what does it mean and what are the conditions and all of those things that come with it. And from all of our research, there is a lot of stuff that comes out. Some of these you will be familiar with. So things like autism, things like dyslexia, things like Tourette's syndrome, cognitive functioning disabilities, slow processing speed, and stammering, to go with all of the others on this list here, are just a few of the different types of neurodiversity. But most importantly, it's what the stats tell us, really. So 15 to 20% of people in the UK are estimated to be neurodivergent. 36% of those employees have not received any guidance from their employer at all, which is quite a scary number. 3 in 10 of those employees haven't told HR or their line manager, and that's purely because they're afraid or embarrassed to do so. And 65% of those employees fear discrimination within the workplace. Autistic people face the largest pay gap of all disability groups, receiving a third less than non-disabled people on average. 50% of those employees have been off work during 2023 due to some of the challenges that they faced throughout their condition, and 20% of employees are still waiting for adjustments to be made in the workplace. Only 21.7% of autistic people between the ages of 16 to 64 years old are actually in employment. This is such an untapped talent pool, especially against the skills shortage and unemployment challenges that we're currently facing. As organisations, we need to support these groups of people and make that workplace a much safe and better place to work. In summary, I guess what we need to do is we must do better.
So why do we have such an issue with employing neurodiverse candidates? So 28% of employers said that they thought an autistic person would be unlikely to be a team player. 34% of employees said that they thought an autistic person would be unlikely to fit into the team. And 96% of recruiters, our own, think that unconscious bias is a problem. So there is such a clear bias out there. I think bearing in mind as well, and brutally honestly, these numbers are what the people are actually being honest. I think the reality is it's actually more stark than that. The good news, the demand for our unconscious bias training has significantly grown. This is showing promise, but there is an issue out there. Organisations need to take responsibility to make sure training is embedded. What we tend to see traditionally is that businesses seem to only train a certain level of individual within their organisation. My strong view is this should actually be company-wide. It's not just for leaders. Everyone needs to play a part in making all people feel welcome, not just those that are neurodiverse, but all employees. And I think this is the key part around unconscious bias. So it's important that we educate everyone within the business. I wanted actually just to flag a stat that's quite recent. I think it came out yesterday, Sam, from the Rec, which just published around 55% of employers surveyed in the UK do not specifically state an interest in diverse candidates on the job advert. Worryingly, there's been a rise, 49% the year before, 48% the year before that. 44% of businesses do not use inclusive specific working job adverts, compared to 28% in 2023 and 33% in 2022. These results actually show we're moving backwards, not forwards. And I think as HR professionals, as leaders in business, we all need to take some responsibility for that. This won't have a very positive impact on those already marginalised groups within business. So arguably as well, Amazon reverting back, announcing that all of their full-time return to office mandates, some saying that actually this is now the beginning of post-diversity era. But that can't be so. We've got to do something about it. It's time to work through and look at new ways of working. Back to you, Anna.
Switch. So what we're going to be looking at now is what we want to do is, I guess, almost look at fostering a neurodiverse workforce and why is that so important. So number one is just what it says, it's the right thing to do to allow that flexibility and trust for all employees to thrive in your business and to succeed. I think you can access a much broader range of talent and skills, so real benefits here to access all of those developed skill sets across a number of diverse organisations and skill sets. It definitely is a different way of thinking. It leads to greater innovation, and that can only lead to a better place to work. It's a great way of representing your own customer base, better customer service, successes, and everything that goes along with that as well. Authentic and inclusive culture, strengthen your employee brand, means you can attract the talent above your competitors. And most importantly, if we get all of this right, you'll get some increased productivity due to better communication, creativity, and problem solving, which will lead to a competitive advantage.
So what? So before we look at an inclusive recruitment process, I just want to focus on key things to remember. So don't limit your fair, equitable, factual approaches to those with formal diagnosis. I'm a big believer that it should be open to all. If someone needs a reasonable adjustment to do their job, we should be able to engage with that as an organisation. Embedding pro-neurodiversity process in your business will benefit all employees. So it is a no-brainer. It's something that you should look at, and I strongly believe that it really supports organisations within growth. Good conduct and employee experience is key for all. So as already mentioned, any steps you put in place, changes you will make will benefit all. It's likely that you'll need to report on neurodiverse workforce data in the future. So if you get on the front foot, it's going to save you a lot of aggro moving forward. So actually you will be prepared and ahead of the change. So one to really consider. And you can make changes for free. I hear a lot around budgets being an issue and they're a barrier to make change. Budget shouldn't be a barrier. There's lots of things that you can do with a small cost or no cost that are just small changes that do make a significant impact. And let's be honest, you have to start somewhere. So inclusive recruitment processes, they remove barriers and will enable you to attract, engage, and inspire a broad talent pool. Before we look into the detail of how you create an inclusive recruitment process for all, I want to highlight some of the common barriers on the entry to neurodiverse people. So understanding and interpreting complex and lengthy written verbal questions, this is overwhelming for people. So you need to think about how you remove that barrier. Group interviews and/or crowd environments can be intimidating. Verbal communication can be a challenge, so it's difficult to demonstrate their capability and skills. There sometimes is difficulty around concentration, so it may look like people are disinterested or disengaged with the process. That isn't true. And information processing can be a challenge, so an unable to answer some of the questions under the pressure, i.e. interview format, should now be considered. High levels of anxiety and low confidence leading to bad interview processes as well, which again doesn't give a fair representation of what people are trying to achieve. We talk a lot around recruitment audits and how they help, because actually what you're doing is assessing what you're currently doing in your processes and looking for those small tweaks and refinements. It's certainly something where people are coming to us around impartial audits at the moment to think about where is the place to start. Actually, your process is a pretty good place to look at initially. So on to the recruitment process then. So attraction. Think about the content you're putting out to promote not just the vacancy, which is where I hear a lot. Think about actually you as an organisation and as an employer as well. Is your employee brand and employee value proposition engaging and appealing to those demographics, neurodiverse candidates and different groups? It works for lots of different things. Can the individual see themselves actually working for you? Is it appealing to that demographic? Are you inclusive and welcoming on your branding and how you engage with those people? Do you offer things like a mixed media range of adverts? So we talk to people a lot around collateral. So having things like people digest information differently, all types of people. So smaller adverts, more pictorial adverts, some video content, thinking about different medium to work with individuals, not just on the adverts, but then also on your JDs and how they integrate within the business later. I think about how they feel safe. Do you give an empowered, safe environment as a portrayal within your business? And can you start to think about inviting more speculative applications into the process from candidates? So i.e. via targeted neurodiverse programs or working groups. So think about actually, rather than it being a key advert that you're looking at, think about just building that talent pool behind the scenes. On to search. So where are you actually looking for candidates? I get asked this question all of the time. So a couple of years ago, we at Curve embarked on building a diversity index. So that wasn't just around neurodiversity, it's around all different lenses of diversity. Because actually lots of providers give you lots of different things. So giving yourself options around that is really key. But thinking about where you advertise, there's some great examples: Exceptional Individuals, National Autistic Society. Do you have the partnerships in place to actually press forward with your attraction search? When we work with businesses, we also think about actually how you, as your recruitment function or team, or indeed your recruitment partners, are trained to ensure they approach a diverse range of candidates. Also, how are your hiring managers educated? Are they able to process these applications without that massive unconscious bias? So on to application then. This is all really more about actually how is it user-friendly. The majority of businesses have some form of career site. We think about things like, do you use any tools such as Recite Me to help people better apply? So that might be things like adjustment of size, colours, opportunity around audio versions. What does the application process actually look like? Is there an opportunity to adjust from having a CV like everyone does traditionally to actually thinking about how you can flex on that to engage the application process and different individuals early doors. Could they submit something like a video or a voice application instead of that CV piece? The other thing of thinking about on application is, do you actually share the process, what that process is going to look like from the point of application at that point? Because as we talked about earlier, there is a fear around the unknown. So actually being really transparent and upfront, giving the opportunity to request reasonable adjustments early door within that, making it super clear for anyone that's engaged within that process that everyone has a right to ask what's going on next, and actually just making it really accessible is really important. On to screening. So you can conduct screening in many different ways. We often run a very traditional recruitment process where telephone screen, face-to-face interview. That's generally how the world works at the moment. But you can think about things like sharing the screening questions ahead of time, so allowing people time to prepare effectively. Thinking about how the people that are handling that kind of recruitment candidate management piece, i.e. your recruiters, are they trained to facilitate the screening processes? Think about questions that are more linked to the neurodiverse group, making sure it's fully fair and equitable throughout. Does your screening process capture potential skills-based qualities rather than just education-based experience? So think about the depth and breadth of actually what you're looking for. We as a world will be moving more towards skills-based hiring. Get on the front foot and use that as a priority around your screening at this point. Interviews, really important, can be a huge barrier for a lot of people. So how do you think about adjusting the interview process to meet different needs? And again, all about the education piece, your hiring managers in terms of how they handle that. Could you switch the medium of the interview? Could you look at offering things like a day on the job assessment rather than actually having to go through a really rigid assessment process or an assessment day, and think about actually what that can offer other individuals and give opportunity to mark around how they did on the job rather than just in the interview. Then we move on to pre-employment screening, so PES. The PES process is often very arduous. Can you think about how you can send out videos or multimedia around how they need to comply and do those things? Can be really, really frightening if you've got a massive document to fill in and people calling you about various documents you need to submit. So think about how you can make that really easy right at the beginning. Onboarding, adjust traditional paperwork, make it less heavy. Think about what you actually need, get the information and tasks completed in smaller slots. So think about how you can kind of flow that through. And finally, on to induction. Induction is really critical, giving people access to buddies or like-minded people within the organisation to work with throughout. Could you consider how you can adjust that and make this fit for purpose right at the beginning? Put those reasonable adjustments in place. Ask it as part of your process to everybody. Don't just ask it to people that you suspect might have a diagnosis. Think about the formats, the location, the travel, maybe breaking down the time of induction and making it a little bit more simple. It's really important to provide that ongoing candidate care throughout as well, making sure that the entire process, there's lots of people to interact with as required and people to ask the questions. Remember, people get on better with different people as well. So ask the candidate how they want to be communicated to and work with them to produce something that's fair and transparent. So a couple of slides just to bring it to life even more. There's a couple of really practical examples that I wanted to talk through. So alternative assessment processes, thinking about how else candidates can show you what they're capable of away from the traditional interview format. Use of different tools can really help this, and actually having a multifaceted assessment process is really helpful because you get better things from different people. Doesn't mean they're better for the job or not, but you can assess throughout and look at how you score that throughout the process. Also asking hypothetical or abstract questions, such as the one that's on the screen at the moment, can really put autistic applicants into a stressful and anxious state, further impairing that interview performance. There was quite an interesting comment around one autistic respondent who said if someone was applying for a job as a violinist in an orchestra, they wouldn't be asked to tell the interviewer around their achievement in that. They'd be asked to play the violin. And I think linking back to what I was talking about, giving people the opportunity to do some on-the-job kind of assessment is really good. Just wanted to pop a case study in there. There are some great organisations out there who are already running inclusive neurodiverse specific recruitment processes. They are larger organisations, and I don't want to take away from the fact, yes, they have big budgets, but there's definitely some good takeaways in here. So example, SAP, global software company. Since 2013, they've been running an autism at work programme underpinned by autism and the work leads within the country, who personally connect with each of those applicants and sponsor them throughout the application process. It focuses on clarity of process, reasonable adjustments, emphasis around hiring managers, really to get to know the people before they start so they can manage them effectively, accesses to buddies, mentors, coaches, and external support throughout the duration of the career. So there's lots of really interesting stuff going on within that. So just before I hand over to Anna, as I mentioned before, interest in our audit and consultancy services specifically linked to creating and embedding neuro-inclusive process have really taken off. It is a real opportunity to just make your processes better for all, and that's all we're talking about today. Over to you, Anna.
So I'm going to have a look now at accommodating working practices, really. So thank you very much, Kelly. What we're going to do now is just share our learnings and our tips on how to empower those employees through those kind of practices, reasonable adjustments and education. An inclusive workplace absolutely retains great employees, and that's what we're looking at. So which will enable you to create accommodating, equitable working practices and what to focus on. Taking a personalised approach, meet each employee's needs, train hiring managers on how to do it, empower them to do this, and your employees will be much happier, fulfilled, and they will actually feel really protected when they come and work for you. Think about the education and the awareness piece, which is what we've said already. It's absolutely key for everybody to be trained. So all levels of the business, make sure that training is applied. Everybody needs to understand the why and the how and what it means to them. And remote and flexible working practices, forcing everyone to follow the same working pattern is not going to work for everyone. As Kelly mentioned Amazon earlier already, think about that flexible approach. Ultimately, we need empathy, we need transparency, and we need that and key to all of the approaches that we do. Okay, so when we talk about reasonable adjustments, again, it's one of those ones where we just think about, is it a kind of big budget ticket? And it doesn't need to be. Reasonable adjustments is something that we talk about a lot. Anyone should be allowed to ask for these, not just those individuals that have got a diagnosis. It's not taboo to ask for reasonable adjustments. It's just the right way to ensure all of your employees are able to work to their full potential while feeling safe and supported. Why wouldn't you allow someone to do their job better by just adjusting how, when, and where they work occasionally? For example, adjusting the working environment, lighting, space, sound, dedicated desk, and not a hot desk can give someone that security and that reassurance that they know where they're coming and they know where they're going to sit every day. Flexibility in working patterns, time, remote and hybrid, again, is something that's really important. And we know now with COVID that it can be done. Additional training, tools and technology are all there to support. Ideally, you can move to an output-based performance management model, so the input and how the work gets done doesn't matter. It's all about the outputs and how the outputs are measured. To just go a little bit further into the adjustment, which can be made in the working environment, I wanted to share this great resource that we've come across. As a neurotypical person, it's really illuminating to think about how lighting, space and decor can make such a big difference to a neurodiverse person. Think about the lighting. Is it adjustable? Can it be dimmed? Is it natural? Think about the space. Think about the sensory processing issues. Be aware of smells, be aware of sounds, be aware of access, be aware of that personalisation. And again, none of these are big budget ticket things. Think about the decor, calming colours and the environment, focuses on a non-distracted elements like TVs, animations, etc. So it's just about being aware of the individuals that you've got in your workforce and how you can make those adjustments for them. Kelly shared an excellent case study earlier, and I'd just like to share a second one now. So this is another case study of someone that is doing really well. And yes, while they are a larger organisation, and yes, they will have had some required budget, there are some considerations here which are worth sharing. Barclays Bank built a brand new campus in Glasgow in partnership with the Scottish Autism, with pure inclusivity in mind. Everything was considered, so including the lighting, the sound, the space, and the technology. And it's just a great example of how those small touches can be made within your organisation. So the final kind of slide for me before I hand you back over to Kelly is, how do you build neurodiverse strategies into your wider ED&I strategy? And it's something that we should all be looking at now, really. So we've broken it down into kind of 6 very simple kind of areas, really. Training and awareness. We would absolutely recommend that you regularly invest in training and the awareness for all employees to increase the understanding of neurodiversity. This helps to reduce the stigma and promote a more inclusive and much more empathetic workforce. We've just talked about adjustments and support, but provide those necessary adjustments and support, such as flexible working arrangements, assistive technologies, tailored communication methods, and transition mentors on an individual personalised basis. Think about the leadership commitment. It's really important that leaders are role models in this, and this should come from the top down and the bottom up, so it's completely inclusive all the way through. Policies and practices ensure that these are inclusive of neurodivergent individuals. This includes recruitment, onboarding, performance management, career development, and all of those processes. And most importantly, make sure that they are visible so that all of the employees can actually read them at a time that's right for them. Make sure you're building that inclusive culture. Promote the culture that values and respects neurodiversity. Educate employees and foster an environment where neurodivergent individuals just feel involved and understood. They don't want to stand out. They just want to be part of that workforce. And then with everything that we say, once you've done it, you need to plan, do, check. You need to regularly and consistently review and improve those elements. Ultimately, it's all about creating that sense of belonging to all employees. Kelly.
Thank you. So then to close around our top tips and takeaways. So you've heard a lot today, but I think the key takeaway should be start small and build on what works. No one's expecting massive change from day one, but if you don't start somewhere, it's never going to change. But think about what you can do. Work to your budget. So you don't need to spend a fortune. And actually, when you're thinking about starting small, what you want to do is try a number of different things and see what actually works. Start with an audit of your people processes. How can you make them more inclusive? It's a really good place to start because you already know what happens. How do you build on that and make that more inclusive? Ask your existing employees what they actually want. So think about what you're asking, get some deep key questions together, get the feedback together, and actually, rather than you assuming what people need, ask the population that it affects. Take an individual approach to adjustments, but normalise it. Make it part of your working practices. Ask everyone if they need an adjustment to do their role. Take a collective approach to training and education. We talked a lot around the fact there's a lot of leadership training going on. It needs to be everyone. So make sure that actually when you're training, you're using that and you're using that as your key kind of rollout for everyone in the business. So everyone's got a part to play and they are aware of that. Embed inclusive recruitment practices as standard. I took you through all the way from kind of where it starts out, inclusion around sourcing and attraction, right the way through to induction. So there's lots and lots to think about in that, but really spend some time embedding those into those practices. Regularly review and adjust. So have a working party, get people together, look at the 3 initiatives that you've started, see what's given the most success. Re-ask your employees to see how they feel like the change has happened. Empower your line managers to manage their direct reports in the best possible way. People are individuals, so the more they get to know them, the more time they spend with them, the more flexibility you give people to manage people effectively, the better output you're going to get. And then lean on partners and networks. This is a massive topic, and we have spent months, years trying to educate ourselves on this. No one's expected to know everything. So actually, if you can build your network, work with key partners, and think about working together, you will get a lot more out of this.
Lovely. That's the last time we're going to have to move the laptop, so you'll be glad to know it's going to stay still for a moment. Thank you both. As Kelly just mentioned, that last point around leaning on your networks and partners, we just wanted to share just this very small handful of some of the resources that we've used to pull this deck together. As Kelly said, there is a wealth of information out there. There's a wealth of organisations that specialise in various different elements of neurodiversity and inclusion just generally, and also more kind of niche providers and partners. So my kind of key takeaway to you is that you do not need to start from scratch on any of this. Go out there, have a look, see what other people have been doing, see what's been working, like lean on those examples already where people have been testing stuff, so you can kind of take the good bits off the top. Also, as Kelly mentioned, probably 2 years ago now, we built the beginnings of our diversity inclusion index, so that we could start to pull together this wealth of different suppliers and partners that can support in your people processes, that specialise in neurodiversity practices. If that's something you're interested in, if you've got a particular area you'd like to know a little bit more about, please feel free to get in touch. I'll be really happy to look at that for you and give you some additional resources to get in touch with. Lovely. So thank you very much both again. We are going to just open the floor now for any questions, if you have any which have been submitted. I'm just going to have a look and I can't see any that have come through. But if you've got any questions you want to ask, now is the time. You can use the chat function or the Q&A function. Alternatively, like I say, if you want to go away and digest and you come up with questions later down the line, or you're watching this on demand later, our contact details are just there. So if you want to reach out to any of us, you're more than welcome to do so. Okay, let's have a final check. See if we can see any questions from Tim. No, nothing yet. Perfect. Okay, lovely. So what's coming up next from the Curve group? It's my job now to close the session. So our next webinar is in December, and again on another very topical subject all around AI tools, and specifically how you can start to think about making sure that your business or your HR team, recruitment teams are using those tools ethically within the kind of people space. So the registration is already open on the website on our insights page. If you'd like to register, you can do now to join us, and we'll see you in December even. And then at the very beginning of next year, we'll be launching our 2025 vision with our future trends for 2025. We'll be circulating more information about that shortly to you via email, so keep an eye out for that. And once we've completed that document, we'll then be announcing the webinar programme for 2025. So thank you very much. You will receive a copy and a link to this recording. So again, you can feel free to rewatch or share it with your colleagues. But all that is left for me to say is thank you. I hope it was useful joining us today, and please do get in touch if we can support you with anything that we discussed today. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye-bye.